Welcome back to Behind the Caution Tape. I'm your host, CrashLit. We are recording here at the Surf Fest on 29th Street in University Park, and let's get into everything happening with USC athletics because there has been a lot going on. And let's start just go over that basketball had their Big Ten Media Days last week. Women's basketball was on Wednesday. Men's basketball was on Thursday. For the women's team, it was Lindsay Gottlieb, Juju Watkins, and Kiki Iriothin representing the women's team. And for the men's team, a day later, it was head coach Eric Musselman, Desmond Cloud, and St. Thomas, who went for the Trojans. In addition, just some general basketball news. It appears that Hoopla has been canceled. Not 100% on that one, but based on the fact that I can't seem to find it now anywhere on the website after being able to see it for the past couple of weeks, and I know I've been kind of hyping it up, especially for the men's team, getting to know them. We'll get into them in a minute. It appears that it is off the table. However, let's get into some news. There's definitely been some news with the men's team going on. So Big Ten preseason awards for the men's team have been announced. USC is predicted to finish 14th in the Big Ten by the media. Purdue expected to win the conference. And no USC players made the preseason all-conference team. So that's a lot for Musselman and co to prove that they belong in this new Big Ten. In addition, the men's basketball team has announced 2 exhibition games. First, UTSA at home on October 15th at 7 p.m. and then Gonzaga and Palm Desert at Acrisure Arena on October 26th at 5 p.m. Both games will be available on the Big Ten Plus. And let's start the UTSA game because UTSA is a lot like USC in the regards that they are both new look teams with new coaches. UTSA hired Austin Clonch this offseason, who was with the Alabama staff under Nate Oates that made the Final Four, which was a historic year for them, especially when you think Alabama, you don't exactly think basketball right away. But anyways, getting off topic there, so bring it back. But with this UTSA roster that he's brought in, there are 14 new scholarship players. So a very new look team. And I mean, we know USC has 16 new players altogether. And like I said, this will just be a great opportunity for fans to get to know the team, even if it's not kind of like the hoopla sort of situation where they introduce the players and, have a bunch of fun events to kind of just create exposure around the teams. It'll still be just great to just see these guys in action, especially like I've said, I only know Harrison Hornery, JD Plow, and Bryce Pope. And in addition, the Gonzaga game will be in Palm Desert, and it's a charity exhibition with proceeds from the game going to Eisenhower's Health's Cardiovascular Institute and helping support the work they do in the Coachella Valley. So I think these will definitely be 2 big games. USC played Gonzaga last year in the Las Vegas Invitational. I was at that game. Brutal game to be at, but definitely Gonzaga has been a good program. Mark Few has consistently put up some of the best teams in the country. When you hear the name Gonzaga, you immediately think basketball, and they're always contending for the national title. It's just a question of when they're going to get there. I don't think it's an if, it's a when for Mark Few and co. And now we'll turn to some baseball news. 2025 schedule was announced last week. USC has 29 home games, 24 of them at Great Park, the other 5 at LMU's Page Stadium. And all USC free home games this year, like last year, will be, according to the website, free and open to the public. Trojans also have 27 road games, and they'll face 7 teams that made the 2024 NCAA tournament. And then 11 of the teams they played this year, they also faced last year, and they went 12-10 against those teams. And then I'd say some notable games, and there are definitely some other ones out there like UConn and Vanderbilt who will come to Irvine to take on the Trojans, but some games I'm looking forward to. And I guess these are games I've just gotten used to seeing, having watched this team for the past 3 years. Yeah, UC Santa Barbara coming, UC Irvine, UCLA, Oregon, and then Cal State Fullerton. Those games will be on the road at Goodwin Field, but I always love going to Goodwin Field. It's probably one of my favorite away venues I've been to in my time since I've gone to away baseball games, of the away venues I've visited, just because you just tell they're all about baseball there, which makes it a fun experience as a fan. So those are the games that I really am looking forward to. And also just the ones that I think will just be just great matchups for all. And I guess maybe I am a little And I do, like I said, I understand. I kind of went with a lot of more local or just teams where fans are familiar with. And that's just because I know what those games will look like because they're always exciting. Like I remember seeing Oregon come to Data Field 2 years ago. That was a lot of great series. UCLA, the hate and the rivalry there for any sport is fun. Cal State Fullerton, like I described. UC Santa Barbara's always got good teams, and same with UCI. So that's kind of my logic on why I picked those games as kind of the ones that stand out to me. And then the season opens on February 14th with a 3-game series against George Washington at Great Park. Women's lacrosse team, meanwhile, played Arizona State and Palm Desert. However, no scores were made available to the public. If you went there, I suppose you could find info out, but I wasn't able to find anything. So I do not have any score updates on how the affair with the Sun Devils went. However, next up for the Trojans is the Cardinal Gold scrimmage, which will probably mean teams split and will be facing each other on October 19th at Allison Felix Field. Men's golf, meanwhile, is currently taking part in the Trinity Forest Invitational that started yesterday and will run through tomorrow. It's hosted by SMU in Dallas, and as of yesterday action, they lead the competition against 15 other schools. And the Trojans lineup for the Trinity Forest Invitational is Antonio Safa, Gavin Aurelia, Jack George, Jack Buchanan, and Tyler Greenspan. And meanwhile, for the women's golf team, they took part in the Windy City Classic last week in Wilmette, Illinois, which is hosted by Northwestern, took 3rd overall. But a big congratulations to freshman Jasmine Koo, who won the individual event for her first career title in Cardinal Gold. The women's golf team is next out at the Stanford Intercollegiate event from October 18th through October 20th in Palo Alto. Men's tennis, meanwhile, started play today in the Louis 525K feature that will run from today until Sunday. So we'll check back in with them and get results to you next week. Women's tennis, meanwhile, won the Women of Troy Invitational, which was happening from last Thursday up until yesterday at Mark Stadium, and with freshman Jana Hossam winning the singles title, and senior Sloan Mora and freshman Anya Murthy winning the doubles title. So big congratulations to all three of them for helping the Trojans sweep the Women of Troy Invitational. Meanwhile, swim and dive for both men's and women's starts this week, as both the men's and women's team will host the USC Swim Invitational at Otangzu Aquatic Center. That'll be October 11th and 12th, so this weekend. And then 4 Big Ten athletes for both teams made the Big Ten watch list for USC. Sophomore Krzysztof Kimielewski and freshman Moritz Wesseman on the men's side. And for the women's side, it was sophomore Minna Abraham and freshman Kate Miller. So big congratulations to them and best of luck to them this weekend. Now I'll move on to the women's soccer team. So before we get into how the team fared against Oregon this weekend for their senior day and pride game, their game on October 17th, so 10 days from now, will be against Ohio State, is now being played at BMO Stadium instead of the Coliseum. And I think this is great because obviously, don't get me wrong, Coliseum is a great venue. Love it for football. I went for a lacrosse game last year, but I think just kind of the nature of it felt a little empty. And I think just getting to play at BMO especially with how well this team's doing, is really exciting because it's a soccer stadium. It was built for soccer. So I think, and having been to an Angel City game there once, I just know it'll be a great environment. So I think fans should really make sure to go out there. I believe that game will be free, so definitely make it to that game if you can. The UCLA game, scheduled for October 27th, as of now is still scheduled to be played at the Coliseum. So this past Saturday, USC got a 2-0 win versus Oregon at Dignity Hill Sports Park in Carson. Maylee Hayes scored both goals for the Trojans. And USC is currently 21st, and I expect the Trojans probably move up a spot or two. They got a 9-1-2 overall record, and they are currently 5-0-1 in Big Ten play, and they're tied for third, and they're a 3-way tie for first, with UCLA and Iowa. So they are continuing to impress. So, and if they keep playing this way, it's definitely just they keep winning this week when they play at Illinois on Thursday and Northwestern on Sunday. The Illinois game at 5 p.m., Northwestern at 12 p.m., both those games on the Big Ten Plus. They win those games. That game against Ohio State's just going to be an absolute showdown. I mean, it's just two great brands. Always just, it's just going to be really exciting. So I think some of these matchups that we're getting to see out of this Big Ten have been really exciting to watch. And I think especially seeing something like USC, Ohio State at BMO Stadium doesn't get much better than that, in my opinion. That's definitely one I've got circled in my calendar. I made sure to change the location so I don't go to the wrong place on the day of that one. So that's what they got going this week. Football, meanwhile, and before we get into how the Minnesota game went, the football team announced that next season will open against Missouri State on August 30th, and they'll be an FBS school. So don't worry, fans, you don't have to worry about USC playing an FCS program. Although I feel like I don't know, it feels sometimes like maybe I'm going against the grain here saying this, but I feel like I don't think it's as big a deal as some people try to make it seem that USC has never played an FCS program. I think reality is, I think sometimes you got to create the best schedule. And I'm not saying we got to get rid of great games like Notre Dame or other great conference matchups, but I think a little extreme sometimes. Sorry if it's an unpopular opinion to some people out there. But anyways, for those who do care, Missouri State will be in FBS. They're FCS right now, but they are transitioning to the FBS. So they will be FBS. So therefore, USC's streak of playing FBS of having USC never playing an FCS school, that will continue. And that is being in place, at least for next year, in place of the Ole Miss series that was canceled this summer. Ole Miss was supposed to be the home opener for USC this year, and then the Trojans were going to make the return trip to next season. Then Trojans were set to go to Oxford in 2026. But between USC's Big Ten schedule being harder and the SEC expecting to add 9 conference games in a couple of years, and that conference game more competitive, the two sides just agreed to call the series off. Now on to some news. So Rajon Davis announced he would redshirt last week over playing time, but it seems to be more of a more mutual understanding between him and the coaches, unlike kind of the fallout that Bear Alexander experienced with Lincoln Riley and the coaching staff. So I think Davis is still practicing from what I've heard. Unlike Alexander, it sounds like he's, at least from what I've heard, and if I've heard and if anything has changed, please, if I'm not reporting this accurately, please tell me. I apologize if this is wrong, but it sounds like Alexander's kind of not really training, and it appears, I don't think anyone is going to be surprised if he decides to transfer because of the situation that he finds frustrating with USC. Alexander Davis sounds like he's still practicing and will probably be back next year. I think he just knows kind of where he stands and wants to ensure he makes the most of it, which kind of led Riley to actually saying that he thinks that you should just give everyone 5 years and then you can play as much or as little as you want. And then you don't have to worry about this redshirt thing. So we'll see what happens with that. Sports, obviously, college sports, especially football, they're evolving all the time. So we'll see how all that plays out. Now on to the football game. So a tough 24-17 loss against Minnesota. I watched about halfway through. I went to Rock and Riley's for the start of it, stayed till about halfway through the second quarter so I could go to volleyball and just, get ready for that. But I think honestly, the great environment there, everyone was into it, but it was just a bummer just to see another slow first half. And this just seems to be an issue. And I think we're seeing that, okay, you can get away with a slow first half against teams that aren't as good, but like Wisconsin, but even still kind of Minnesota, I think they're better than people think or thought they would be, but still, I mean, maybe because their record, they're now 3-3, but still, that's a good team. They have the best pass defense in the country, 5th best defense overall in the FBS. So I think people just underestimated this team a little bit, or Minnesota, and I think it's just a solid team overall. And I think just USC definitely has some issues they do need to address, though. The O-line needs to keep getting better, especially Mason Murphy and Elijah Page. They need to just help protect Miller Moss more because he's continuing to take beatings. And then some people have been wondering, will Lincoln Riley go Jaden Maeva? I'm not sure if that's the right they need to yet. I think Moss does need more protection. But at the same time, have wondered what if Riley decide to do something where maybe utilize Maeva a bit more or have him come in to kind of get like run the ball for a player, kind of do what Urban Meyer did with the Florida Gators in 2006 when he had Chris Leak starting. But then at once Leak got them into the Gators into the red zone, he'd have Tebow finish the drive. So maybe that's in the cards. So we'll see what happens, especially because I don't think Riley wants to lose Jade Maeva, especially if Miller Moss sticks around another year. And Maeva has already used his red shirt his first year when he was at UNLV. He's a red shirt sophomore now, so he's in his third year of college. So we'll see what happens with that. Defense continue to improve, and I think fans might have. There were definitely some big plays, but Minnesota's had a good running back, and just their rush game was pretty good. And they made some big plays, which certainly helped them. I think the biggest bummer of the loss was just seeing, obviously, especially with just how the game unfolded, 2 interceptions by Moss late in the game, just that USC fell out of the AP poll from number 11 to unranked. They did get the most votes of any unranked team. So I guess we're 26 now, but still definitely frustrating loss, especially to see the team fall to 3-2 and 1-2 in the Big Ten. So I think it's definitely that path to the college football playoff getting a little tougher. It's not impossible, I don't think. And I guess in some ways, maybe maybe the team's a bit more relaxed, comes out firing against Penn State, since you're kind of now playing with almost nothing to lose. I don't know for sure. We'll see how it goes, but I definitely think season can still be a great one. It's just the team now needs this win against Penn State. And it's going to be a tough game because Penn State is 5-0. They've gone 2-0 in Big Ten play. Game's at 12:30 on CBS, but at the Coliseum. And I think the one thing I also want to point out that will help the Trojans is that Big Ten teams who've traveled multiple time zones for conference games are 1-8. So USC's 0-2 when they've gone to they're if you look at their record, they beat Wisconsin, who had to travel 2 time zones, but then when they've gone to Michigan and Minnesota, they lost both those. So you're definitely seeing these Big Ten teams really struggling. Only Indiana was successfully able to beat UCLA, but UCLA's really been a train wreck this year. So not surprised by that one. And Indiana's looked a lot better, but I think overall, you just are seeing just the travel is taking a bit of a toll. It's not the only reason, of course, but I'm just saying, I think that is a big advantage the Trojans have, is that Penn State's got to now travel all the way from State College, Pennsylvania to Los Angeles, California. And with the trend happening, that does give me some confidence that USC can pull it together. So we'll see what happens there. Definitely going to be an exciting game. Like I said, like I've said before, a lot of Penn State alums are going to be there. I got a few family friends who went to Penn State who will be there. So there's going to be a lot of Penn State people at this game, and it doesn't help that it's over fall break. So USC students, please get back in time for this game. We need you there. Yeah, I know I'm selling here, but we just need it. We need every bit of support we can get for this team. So make it back if you can. And then also finally, before we move on to the sports that I made it to this week, the Maryland away game for October 19th, time has been announced. It'll be on 1 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. So another afternoon game, but at least USC fans can probably take shelter if they're not there watching it from the comfort of a place like Rock and Rise, which is probably where I'll be for it. And then now let's turn to men's water polo. So they got a 16-13 win on Saturday over number 6 Cal. I was not at that. I didn't make it to that game. Max Miller had 5 goals for it, though, but I did make it to the 8-6 loss to number 3 Stanford the following day. And Robert Lopez Duarte had 3 of the 6 goals for USC. It was a tough game for USC, as they only got 2 goals in the first half, and then they got 4 in the fourth quarter, 2 goals in the second quarter, and then 4 in the fourth. But just showed that Stanford was really able to rattle off to an early lead, and I was able to hold on. Obviously, a great comeback effort by the Trojans, but as they outscored the Cardinal 4-0 in the final frame, but still it wasn't enough to overcome that early deficit. So definitely a deficit still. So obviously USC is still going to be one of the best teams this year for sure. Cal doesn't seem to be as good this year. It seems like it's really going to be UCLA, USC, or Stanford who's probably going to win it all. And I think probably based on how they are, they're now 12-2 on the season, 1-1 in MPSF play. And that was the other thing about these two matches against Stanford and Cal. They're the first MPSF matches of the season. So we'll see how things go. Stanford currently 2-0 in MPSF play. They'll probably, I wouldn't be surprised if they move into the number 1 seed since they beat both USC and UCLA this weekend. USC, I expect to probably drop 1 to number 3 and then UCLA to number 2. That's my guess. I don't know. We'll find out later this week when the rankings come out and I'll report. Basically, because of the timing of when I record, I think for water polo and soccer, because of the timing of when the weekly rankings come out, it's not on Mondays. I usually am still referencing last week's ranking, and that's why I'm giving you kind of my prediction of where things will go. Whereas with sports like football and volleyball, those have been out. Those come out before I start recording, so I'm always able to provide you with that information as accurate. So we'll see what happens with that. Next games for water polo are this Thursday. They face Cuesta in an exhibition at 11 a.m. And then the following day, they go head to Loyola Marymount for 2 games. They'll take on West Cliff at 4 and then LMU at 6. Those games will be available on overnight.com. So make sure you can watch them there. So definitely it's going to be some big games. Definitely games USC should be able to win, but definitely they're going to need those games to just help them just get back on track and just regain some confidence, because that was definitely a tough loss to Stanford yesterday. It's definitely fun to be at that game, though. A lot of people pulled up. Most of the women's team, actually, women's water polo team was there, so I got to, chat with them. And sat with them. So it was really great environment for those matches, especially those big rivalry MPSF games. Probably see the same thing at UCLA in a couple of weeks. Like I said, I'll be at that one on the 19th. So I'll give you more info on that next week. But overall, definitely just going to be some big games to help the team just kind of get back on track and just regain that confidence after just a tough loss like that Stanford loss. Now, finally today, we'll turn to women's volleyball, who is definitely, I'd say, the most exciting team to watch this weekend. So on Friday, it's a pretty stressful match, but they got a 3-2 reverse sweep over Michigan to start the weekend off. They didn't come out playing good to start the match, and they had to grit out 2 wins in sets 3 and 4, and they fell behind. I believe it was 11-5 for just putting on the Jets and going on, I think it was 10-1 run, something like that. And managed to get a 15-12 set 5 win to get the reverse sweep, which was incredible to be at, but still one of the most stressful matches I've lost. But it was definitely, Michigan's a good team. I'll give them credit for that. But it's still you're just like getting all nervous throughout it. But credit to USC for finding a way to win that game. That was a big game. Allie Batenhorst getting 20 kills in it to help lead the Trojans. And then Leah Ford coming off the bench to help make an impact at middle blocker. So I think definitely 2 big moves there. And then Ford actually would get the start the following night against Minnesota, who was number 12 in the country coming into this game. And USC took care of business against the Golden Gophers. So for everyone who's mad about the football game, anyone who watched the volleyball game instantly felt a lot better after walking out of Galen that night, or anyone who watched it, followed it, whatever. If you knew that game was happening, you felt a lot better, especially if you we're following the football game like I was during the warm-ups on my phone and then also at Rocks before I even headed over to Galen Center. It's been a tight first set, and then the Gophers took set 2. USC won the first set. But something in that second half, USC just came out playing angry. It was just, I think they were frustrated they lost. I mean, I haven't really talked to too many of them about it. I talked to a couple players yesterday leaving water polo on the volleyball team about it. I didn't really get too into it, but just my overall impression was USC came out angry in set 3. They won 25-11. Then set 4 was a little tired, but then USC just pulled away at the end to win 25-18. So great win, big upset win. Allie Batenhorst had 19 kills, and Leah Ford continued to just got the start. And I wouldn't be surprised if she's starting next week against Oregon, UCLA. We'll see what head coach Brad Keller decides. But overall, it was a big win for the Trojans, and it moved them up 5 spots from 21st to 16th. And like I was saying, I have that data there, so I have the information. It's out now. But so yeah, 16th in the country. So a top 20 matchup now coming up against number 11 Oregon at Matthew Knight Arena in Eugene. That place is going to be going crazy. Oregon's one of the good programs in the country, well coached by Matt Ulmer. So it's definitely going to be Trojans are going to have their hands full, but I think it's going to be a competitive match, and Brad Keller knows how to beat Ulmer. He's beaten him before, but it's definitely a lot different game when it's in Matthew Knight versus in Galen. The last time the Trojans did beat the Ducks. So that game is at 6 p.m. on Wednesday on the Big Ten Network. And then after that game, USC hosts UCLA for the first crosstown showdown of the year. That game will be at 4:30 p.m. on Sunday on the Big Ten Network as well. So definitely two big games for the Trojans. UCLA, I think, is 7-6 this year, 1-3 in conference play. So not quite as playing quite as solid right now. Granted, the Big Ten is a good conference, but I think both matches are going to be tough. Oregon, because they're just good, and UCLA, because it's the crosstown showdown. When it's the crosstown showdown, it doesn't matter about how good or bad teams have played. It's the crosstown showdown, which means they're both going to come out fired up for this game. So I think it's going to just be an incredibly exciting game to watch, and I'm really looking forward to watching Oregon on. I'm going to watch the Oregon game on TV and then definitely go to the crosstown showdown on Sunday. So definitely two big games, and the Trojans can really just continue to prove that they belong in this conference. They're doing a great job of it. Seems like everything Brad Keller told me that he did before the season when I interviewed him covering practices before Pepperdine, said what kind of made a lot of changes to how he did things, and it just has really, it's shown on the court that just this team's a lot tougher, and just they're proving their belong. Definitely, I think having leadership from graduate players like Allie Batenhorst and Greg Gosnell, who went to Nebraska and Indiana respectively for their undergrads, they know what it takes to play in this conference. I think their leadership has been huge. And then also obviously having coaches like Tyler Hildebrand and Spencer McLaughlin, who also worked with Hildebrand working at Nebraska and McLaughlin at Indiana. They know what it takes just to play in that conference. Especially Nebraska has just been dominating the sport for a while under John Cook. But I think this is definitely going to be two great matchups this week. So we will see what happens in those games. Looking forward to it all. So before we go, time to go over how I did last week at the 3 games I went to. So as I said, I went to 2 volleyball matches Friday, Saturday, and then went to water polo on Sunday against Stanford. So that put me at 2-1 last week for record wise. I'm now 15-2 on the season and 227-84 all time. Then my plans for this week, I'm going to be going to football on Saturday against Penn State, and then volleyball on Sunday against UCLA. So definitely make out to both those games. There'll be 2 really big games, especially for football and volleyball. Both teams, Trojans football looking to bounce back, volleyball looking to continue to stay hot. Looking forward to it all. Thank you. That is all for us today. Thank you again for listening or watching this show. Your support means everything to me. I'll see you all next week, and fight on.